Hey, what's up guys? This is Ren, and I've got another political video for you. This was initially going to be much more simple with fewer cuts. But while I was editing the video, things developed and the story changed and I felt like it didn't fit anymore. So now I'm gonna be doing my best to do a retake. I feel like it's important for me to highlight different pieces of news that are important to me, whether it's stuff going on the internet or in real life. And I feel it's particularly important as a trans person to highlight different pieces of transphobia and queerphobia to my audience, because there are a lot of people who watch this channel who aren't trans and who aren't queer and might not get that stuff. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and the Young Turks. For those of you who know nothing about them, TYT, also known as the Young Turks, started uploading on YouTube in 2006. They were one of the first news sources to get big on the platform and one of the first news sources that 10, 11, 12-year-old me saw. They were very progressive for the time, and a big thing that they were known for was taking clips and statements from different conservative commentators and politicians and tearing them apart.
Here's Governor Bobby Jindal, who is technically running for president. Marriage between a man and a woman was established by God, and no earthly court can alter that.
Number one, if you are interested in a place where a court cannot alter the law of God, you should be living in a place like Saudi Arabia. But in our country, we're a secular country, and we have a democracy. We have 3 branches of government. I don't believe there's a branch named God. Okay, it's just
a list of dumb things.
Right, and in Leviticus it doesn't say, you shall not lie with a man, and by the way, that's much worse than wearing 2 different fibers, which I just told you not to do either.
Totally.
No, it says the same exact thing.
All these not lawsuits just waiting to happen.
You all vomited along with me, right? When he said, no means yes if you know how to spot it. When you're taking rape advice from Rush Limbaugh, your life has gone to a terrible point.
They were also one of the first platforms to push for things like Medicare for All and to highlight failings of democratic leadership and messaging that have really come to define politics in the post-COVID era.
It is a huge political risk, and the Republicans will call it socialized medicine. I have a crazy proposal for the Democrats, that when the Republicans say something, you say something back. You know, you also have a mouth, it functions. You could also run ads. You could also do public speaking engagements. You could also go on TV. You could fight back. The assumptions of the establishment are rigged to be in favor of the right wing.
Now that I'm past all of the clips that I wanted to use for that, for me personally, one of the biggest things that I got from watching the Young Turks was seeing one of their commentators. I don't remember her name, but she was a lesbian and a Christian and would speak a lot on the show about her experiences as a gay Christian and talk about fundamentalism. And for me, growing up as a very closeted kid in a very religious household, that was important for me to be able to see that. And being able to hear her talk about that sort of stuff helped me to accept myself as a gay Christian. Which is why it's really, really disappointing to watch the show pivot into transphobia. This started off pretty subtly with Anna making, let's just say, questionable comments on her social media presence. This threw up a lot of red flags for trans people and people that were in the community. Because she was doing a lot of things that people do when they're kind of early into a pivot towards the right or a pivot towards transphobia. This was stuff like saying that trans people were trying to de-woman women by referring to people who give birth as birthing people instead of women as a blanket term. And, you know, there are people like trans men and non-binary people who are capable of having kids and giving birth. And they certainly would not refer to themselves as women. Yeah. Calling all trans people trans rights activists, which is like a really big thing that like TERFs and anti-gay bigots do. And yeah, this has kind of like spread to other hosts like Cenk and spread to their coverage on the show, unfortunately. they've framed this as a difference in strategy for how to secure rights for trans people, but I kind of call bullshit on that. Because this is something that I see like a lot of liberals who are uncomfortable with trans people do, saying, oh, well, there's consensus that you should have access to fair housing and that you shouldn't be discriminated against when getting a job, or that you should be able to get access to medical care. But, oh, well, I don't feel comfortable with trans people competing in sports, or, you know, like, people don't think that's fair. Or trying to call into question the efficacy of giving puberty blockers or hormone replacement therapy to teenagers, when pretty much every medical board has come forth and said that it is really important for kids who are trans, for kids who have gender dysphoria, to have access to that care. And unfortunately, this has culminated in one of their main trans commentators, Ben Carallo, leaving the channel and making a video as to why. Benny is a lot better at talking about this shit than I am. She's a lot better at talking about the interpersonal dynamics between her and the hosts and things behind the scenes, because she was immersed in it, and that was and is her job. But for me, what I'm able to talk about is my experience inside the Young Turks community. I remember I was browsing on their Reddit and ended up finding one of the larger Young Turks discords. And the entire time that I was in that space, I felt like the token trans person, and I felt out of place. This would kind of crop up, like in voice chat specifically, with people asking me questions about like whether or not I was allowed to be myself at work, which is really weird because most people wouldn't mistake me for a 20-year-old man, or me just like cooking or doing whatever or trying to exist in voice chat, and then someone talking about how proud they were that they had a community where I was able to be comfortable, which is just really fucking weird. But yeah, the thing that I will not forget is being in chat with a bunch of people. This was right when anti-trans legislation was starting to kick off. I think this was HB 675 in Idaho had just been proposed. And I was reading through this bill, highlighting certain pieces of text, and someone's nephew walked by, and she instantly was like hushing me, telling me to shut up. And trying to shield her kid from me, or protect her kid from having to hear about anti-trans legislation or about trans people in general. And that was kind of the thing that made me realize, oh yeah, I shouldn't be here, and made me leave that space. Obviously I can't speak about like everyone who's in the Young Turks community more broadly, because they have a ton of people that are, you know, into them. But the vibe that I kind of got was that it was a bunch of liberals in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who wanted to appear like they had a good stance on the issues, but still harbored certain bigotries, to put it mildly. And the thing that has developed after the fact is comments that they've made about Ben's departure on their show. Anna misgendering her own former co-host, which I can pull up a clip of here.
So unfortunately, Benny has decided to leave TYT. I am definitely heartbroken over her decision to do that.
And Jenk saying on his personal social media that Ben was quote unquote an unhinged person. Correction, sorry for misremembering the quote. And disparaging her. And this is a pattern that I see with liberals a lot, and this is really fucking insidious shit. Because you will have a trans person or a queer person on your show to talk about certain issues. You will ignore trans people when you're talking about things that are important to that community, and the second that they disagree with you or feel uncomfortable and leave, you just resort to basic misogyny and transphobia to disparage them. Yeah, it's really disappointing to see, because this used to be really important, And it still is important. And there are still a lot of people who watch this show. Like, The Majority Report, which is a show that I watch, was initially, like, something that was under the Young Turks media umbrella. A lot of hosts for that show, Emma Vigeland, for example, either got their start there or had their careers helped by being on that network. And it is really disappointing to see this network start going in a direction that is harmful and to start misinforming their viewers. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised by this, because they've had a lot of former hosts take a right-wing turn and start grifting to a conservative audience. Jimmy Dore and Dave Rubin were two big examples of that. I think it was 4 years between Dave Rubin leaving the Young Turks and ending up on PragerU. That's been interesting to see him do as a gay man, because he's found limited success over there, but best of luck to him. But yeah, maybe I shouldn't be surprised that the network, who produced host after host who had a Why I Left the Left story, do the same thing themselves. But it's still really fucking disappointing. That's about it. Subscribe to Ben's channel. Have a great rest of your day. I'll post more content later. Bye-bye!